Hello everyone, myself Tarun Arora and I am a member of Software Development Group COPS IITBHU and I am welcoming you to yet another video of our Django learning series. In the last video we learnt about our admin site. So now in this video we would be aiming to build the homepage of our website. So we would be aiming to build something like this. So as you can see, our homepage consists of this sidebar. This sidebar has three links in it. First is a link to the homepage. The second is a link to a page which consists of the list of all the books in our database. And third is a link to a page which consists of all the authors in our database. And then this is a dynamic content. So what this does is it fetches the number of books in our database and displays it here. So if 0 is being displayed here, it means that our database currently has no books, and if we add some books to our database, this count would increase every time we load the page. Okay, so before we dive further, let me introduce you to a few terms. Say, uh, if we go to our URL, say google.com, and press enter, what basically we do is we send an HTTP request to this domain, and then it returns a response. This page is a response. So we follow similar architecture in Django. So we basically need to create a function which would take an HTTP request and return a response. So in Django we call it this function as view. So let us now go into our project. So on any platform you are, uh, to activate the virtual environment, use this command pip-env shell, and this would activate our virtual environment. So now we would start our server and then try to access the home page of our website currently. So we would start our server with this command python manage.py run server. This would start our server and provide us with our URL. So this is the URL our website is currently deployed to locally. So if we try to go to our website, which is at this address, and press enter, it would try to take us to the home page, but currently the home page is not configured. So if we notice our console, what it does a get request to this URL and it returns a response of 404, that means page not found. So firstly we need to fix the URL issue, and then we need to make a function which would be called after hitting that URL. So if we get to our folder structure and we see a catalog app in it, it has a urls.py file. What this file does is this file contains the list of all the URLs currently configured for this app. Currently there are no paths configured for this app, so we need to make a new path. So in this path we would have, uh, since we are hitting this URL and it has no text after this catalog, so we would simply give it a path of uh, empty string, and then we need to here define the next attribute would be the function to be called after hitting this URL. So let us assume we would create a function named index in this views.py file. So we would create it as index. So this index function would be called, and the third attribute, which is the name attribute, this name attribute is helpful for calling this path without writing the whole URL. You would see the benefits of this name attribute later. So give it as any name you like, which needs to be unique for this app. Okay, so now we have saved this. Now it says that catalog.view has no attribute index. So now we will move into our use.py and then create our function name index, and it would take a request. I said view takes a request and returns a response, and it would return a HTML response. So with Django, it allows us to use this render function. So this render function has three attributes. for now. So the first attribute would be the request. The second would be the name of the HTML file we need to give the response. So let us name this as index.html. And the third attribute which I would tell you now, which would be the fresh data. Like I said, we would have the number of books, the number of authors, and the number of copies available. So that would be fetched, and this would be passed in the context attribute. So we would create a variable and we would pass it with in this context attribute. So this would do right now. Currently, I'm removing this context attribute and then save. Remember, we haven't created this index.html file, so we should get an error right now. But this error would be a nice path to go through. Okay, so if we reload this page now, it says that template does not exist at this path. So if we notice, now we want that where should we create that index.html file. So if we go into our main app, main app was local library, and go into its settings, we would probably find something called templates. And if we see, we have dir's attribute. So if it would check the templates in the templates folder. Okay, so we should create a file in the templates folder. So we will create an index.html here and then save. And then again try to go into that and then reload the page. We see we have an empty response. Since our HTML was empty, so we have received it as an empty response. If we try to see the console, we have absolutely no errors, so we are good to go. So now basically what two things we have to do is we only need to write this index.html, and also we need to write this function complete and write a way to fetch those data from our database. So instead of going the traditional way of writing HTML, Django allows us a very basic thing. Like if we notice, our all pages of our website would contain that this sidebar, right? So there is no need to write this sidebar again and again in HTML. So what we can do is we can basically create a template of this whole HTML, and again and again we can overwrite only this part of the HTML. So what we would do is we would create a new file in our templates folder only, and we would name it as base generic.html. You can give it as any name. I chose this name. And here comes the code for this base generic. I have copy pasted it. Don't worry, I'll explain this line by line. So here is the head part. I have given this every page this title, local library, and this part you need to understand what is this load static. So Django allows us to load static files and use static URLs. And if we go into our settings.py again, we would have a static URL and static root. So if you notice that the path of the static would be are the base directory and then local library slash static. So this would be the path of the static folder, and whenever we write static, it would search the files in this folder. See, since we have configured this in our settings.py file. So in this base generic, we have written load static, and we are importing CSS from this folder. That means we need to add this CSS file there also. And this is the sidebar. So every page would contain this sidebar, and here comes the main content. You would notice this block content and end block. So every file, whenever we write that some file is extending this file, the content of the HTML file would be inserted here. Okay, so all we now have to do is we have to save this file, and then we have to create our CSS file, and the CSS would be mainly for this sidebar. Okay, so in this static slash CSS, we would create a new file named styles.css, and similarly I have the code for this also, and then I would save this too. So if we now have the template for our all pages of our website, so now we are ready to write the index.html for our file. I would also be copy pasting this, writing this index.html file. Basically what we have is we are telling the file that we are extending the base dot underscore generic file, and then in the block content we need to export this data. So this data would be inserted here, and our home page would be generated. Okay, so this is the case. Now if we go to the same page, uh, last time we got an empty response. Now if we reload, we get our, see, we have our sidebar. So basically we have our homepage ready, but we don't have the books, copies and copies available, because what we were expecting is we were expecting the context, and in that context would be an object which has these keys, but we didn't pass any object, hence it was not displayed there. So now we need to lastly complete our view. So we are expecting a context which would be an object which would have three attributes. Um, those were num books, num instances, and num instances available. Okay, so it would be the key would be a string. Similarly, it would be num underscore instances. This would also be a string, and then num instances available. Okay, so for example, we pass here one, and the pass our context with this. We are not fetching right now, we are only testing this. So we are done and we reload. So now we have 111 written over here. Okay, so all we now have to do is we need to fetch the number of books, number of instances, and number of instances available. So if in the last video we would have created models also, and if we see our models, we have two models, book and book copy. So firstly we need to import them also. So we would import our models. So from dot models import book and book copy. Okay, so now we have imported our two models, and then we need to count the number of instances. So um, num books would be simply the count of all books, right? So num books would be equal to book dot objects dot count. Similarly, num instances would be equal to book copy dot objects dot count. And lastly, our num instances available would be equal to book copy dot objects. So if the book is available, we would mark its status as one, right? So its state we would filter those objects with status equal to 1, and we would take the count of those elements. Okay, so yeah, that's it. So we would pass numbooks. Similarly, we would give this num instances, and then num instances available also, and then see. So it has reloaded, and then we would reload the page. So it is written over here 000, and there were no errors. So uh, it was written 000 over there since we don't have any books copies and book copies available. So to test this, we would add some books through our admin page. So let's enter our admin page. I am currently logged in. So I would add the books. I would add anything like um, and then save. Okay, so we can see the book was created. Now if we go to our homepage and then reload, we have book 1. Okay, copies were 0 and copies available were 0. Okay, now we would create some book copies. We would give the book reference to this. Status would be 1, that means the book is available. Okay, and then save. The book copy was created, and then again we would reload this page. You can see the copies were increased and the number of copies available were increased also. Similarly, if we go to this book copies and mark its status as not available and save, then reload this page, we can see that copies available become 0. So now we have completed our home page. Here we dynamically fetch our content. We uh, we go through our book and book copy model and filter the number of books and number of books available and total number of copies of our books, and then pass it as the context to our index.html file, and it would render here the number of books instances available and the total number of instances. So yes, we are done with it. Um, there's a lot you can do with the static files, and you need to understand this special status syntax of Django. And I would give the links to views and static files in the description. You can go through them as well and explore as much as you can. Okay, thank you.